I almost never stop. I want to say almost never because there are times when I'll listen to my body, but it's if it's 1 in 100 workouts. I keep going. And as far as pushing myself, being somewhat competitive for the last, let's say, 5 to 8 years in particular, and I'll think, what is Tom doing right now? What kind of training is Brian putting in? What is Brett doing? And I have to keep up with these guys. And if I don't put in the training, I can't compete with them when the time comes.
Welcome to the CoachMD podcast. I'm Dr. Charles Glassman, bringing you 3 decades of experience as a physician and a coach. Join us as we navigate the maze of medical advice with real-life stories, empowering you to take charge of your health. In our That Happens segment, guests share transformative experiences, reminding us that we're all human and not just patients. So get ready for a journey into healthcare reimagined, where empowerment and discovery pave the way. Hey, I'm Dr. Charles, aka CoachMD. In my over 30 years of medical practice, I've made it my goal to help people create strong minds, healthy bodies, and unshakable spirits. And in the CoachMD podcast, my series this year, starting off the year, has been CrossFit Masters 65 plus, because I just turned 65 and I'm really encouraged. Well, it's actually 60 plus. I shouldn't say 65 plus. That's not, it's CrossFit Sit, but I turned 65. So it's great because it doesn't matter just because you're getting older, we're getting older, doesn't mean we have to be old. And I like to talk with people who really embrace that. And my guest today, Eric Cohen, really embraces that because he's not only involved in CrossFit, but he's reached different levels of CrossFit, different mastery, if you will. So thanks so much, Eric, for coming on the program today. Appreciate it.
Yeah, totally my pleasure. I'm excited to share and learn from you and share some of my story and yeah, let people know what's going on.
Yeah, that's great. And, those who've listened to my podcast know that my preferred method of exercise and fitness is CrossFit. And I've got involved in CrossFit. A friend of mine was pulling me and pushing me, and I had every excuse in the book. And about 7 years ago, I finally decided to do it. And I joke around, I've created a monster. He's since fallen off, right? I kept going, right? And how did you get involved in CrossFit, Eric?
So I actually remember the sort of exact story and how I got involved was there was an article in Men's Journal magazine in about 2006 saying, "Hey, try these exercises to increase your fitness on the basketball court." I was playing a fair bit of pickup basketball, and they had, I think it was 10 different scaled down CrossFit exercises. So the first one I ever did was Cindy, which is a classic CrossFit workout, 5 pull-ups, 10 push-ups, 15 squats for 20 minutes. I did 3 pull-ups,
Right.
6 push-ups, 9 squats for 10 minutes. And I remember it was like I heard these sort of angels singing, because just the that type
Right.
of workout just blew me away, and the rest is history.
Yeah, that's neat because it's funny. I had a hip replacement about 7 years ago, right around the time I had started CrossFit. And I had had this injury that kind of led up to that predated that by many years. And I used to look at Men's Journal, Men's Health magazine, and think to myself, I kind of want to do, I know those exercises, they look good for me. I really want to do it. But talking about squats and that, I just didn't know how to do it. So I had a hip replacement. I had started before I had the hip replacement, realized I really need to get this done because I can't, it's not healthy for me. I got it done. And 7 weeks after, or 8 weeks after that, I did the 12 days of Christmas workout. So it was a really great a testament to how the shape I was in before I even had the hip replacement, even though I couldn't do a lot of the movements. And then I was able to recover after that. And it was right. Those exercises were all full body exercises that they portray in the men's journal, Men's Health. And Cindy, I partition the MRF, right? That's how I
Hmm.
get through the MRF,
Sure.
and that's what you do to partition it. And
Yep.
yeah, and so we did that actually a couple weeks ago because we're getting ready for the Open. So our programming has a lot of the Open workouts, so we can try to get ready for it. But so you started with that. How did you find you found that gym? You found a CrossFit place?
No.
No, right,
I,
right.
I was I was doing these type of workouts in our local Globo gym,
Hmm.
and people looked at me like I was crazy. And I was on the CrossFit main page message board doing the literal CrossFit workout of the day. I want to say maybe there were 50, 60, 70 affiliates. When I started, I used to go on business trips, I remember, and I'd try to find a hotel near a CrossFit affiliate so I could go in and train with them and get some coaching. But otherwise, it was all sort of on my own for the first couple of years.
Yeah, yeah, it's and it's tough to do it on your own. I mean, it's and I found I used to think that I could never join a class. Yeah, it's not for me, that kind of thing. But you really need it. And there's actually recent studies that are showing that the benefits you get from exercise are much greater when it's in a club setting, when it's in a class setting. I don't know if you've found that. I mean, I know for myself, I definitely found that.
Yeah, I'm one of those unique individuals who can train on my own.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So starting in COVID, we built out a small gym in my office warehouse flex space with all the toys. It has 20-foot ceilings. We have rope, rings, four barbells, bike, rower, and I can just go in there and just grind. Now, that being said, I do go maybe once every week or two and train with some friends. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, but generally, I'm training on my own. I'm a
No
little,
kidding.
but
Wow.
I get it. I get
Yeah.
it. A lot of people, and I also do enjoy it when I do take a class or coach a class. Just that community aspect. So I have best of both worlds.
Yeah. So I'd like to talk about that when you're on your own because I think one of the lost features of CrossFit is building mindset and building focus and concentration, which does translate into our lives, obviously, as does the fitness. And so when you're training on your own, it has to take a certain different, it's like because you don't have the people cheering you on or seeing out of the corner of your eye somebody setting a pace and trying to keep up to that pace. So you're totally independent. What's the kind of things, the mental gymnastics that you do that keeps you going? Because it's so easy to, especially when you're not in a class with a timer, everybody's on the timer. It's so easy to just stop, right?
Yeah, I almost never stop. I want to say almost never because there are times when I'll listen to my body, but it's if it's one in 100 workouts. But otherwise, I keep going. And as far as pushing myself, being somewhat competitive for the last, let's say, 5 to 8 years in particular, I've gotten to know many of the other guys that I compete with, and I'll think, what is Tom doing right now? What kind of training is Brian putting in? What is Brett doing? And I have to keep up with these guys. And if I don't put in the training, I can't compete with them when the time comes.
Yeah, so that's good motivation. A lot of people they'll say that, oh, it's I don't want to be competitive and it's not good for me. It's negative energy, but here it's not. It's actually very positive because it helps you achieve your greatness. It helps you go to that next level because it's funny just to go back to what you were saying when you first started and this is a good message for everybody who is thinking about doing CrossFit or is new to CrossFit and intimidated by it. Here's Eric, who's been doing it for quite some time. And he, when you first started, you were doing from, Men's Journal workout, just and scaling it back, just doing what you could do and feeling exhausted doing it. Because I remember way back in the day when I was in my early 20s and I started karate, I'd always wanted to do karate, and I was in medical school and I saw a flyer came out and it was advertising a club karate class in the medical school. And I joined that. I remember it was a Tuesday night, and the next class was a Thursday. After that Tuesday night class, I could barely walk for like the next 2 days. Here I'm in my early 20s. So you're getting people who are in their 60s, like we are, right? And they're saying, oh, I can't do that. I'm not young anymore. Well, it doesn't matter how old you are, how young you are. If you start doing something that you haven't done in a while, it's going to you're going to feel it. You're going to feel sore. Now, you train a lot. Are there any times, I mean, you still get sore sometimes, right? I mean, you still after you
Sure.
push yourself. Yeah.
Sure. I recently switched up my squatting program and was going through a 20 rep squat cycle. Mayhem does this where every week you add 5 or 10 pounds and you're going for one set of, you build up to it, but you're going to one
Right.
set of 20 reps and it's just horrible. And,
Right.
the day after those, I'm generally pretty sore.
Yeah.
So it
Eh,
does happen. And just to expand on what you were talking about, when I started in 2006, CrossFit was very much this Navy SEAL, gung ho, if you're not puking, you're not working kind of mindset.
Yeah.
And over nearly 20 years, I've really seen the evolution. And in my coaching now, it's meeting people where they are.
Yeah.
And I see this at gyms. I coach on occasion at one of our local gyms, and there's no judgment. The coaches have gotten much better at scaling the workouts. And for me in particular, when I see someone come in who's relatively new and learning, I think that person is much braver, stronger, and more impressive than someone like me who can walk in and be very comfortable. Like they're really going from moving outside of their comfort zone, let's say,
Yeah.
and that impresses the hell out of me.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a great message. My wife for a long time was very intimidated, and I've been trying to get her involved, and the two of us, I got the way I got her because I just feel it's such a great full body fitness. I don't see any other fitness modalities that just incorporate strength training and aerobics. It's just and mobility. It does everything. So where I was able to get her to start by having one of our coaches do a private. So we do once a week, we do a private, the two of us. And now she just started coming to classes and it's fun. I love it. And it's a great thing we can do together. And right, like you said, for those people who are a little bit intimidated, if you go to a good gym, and most of the gyms now are very good, the coaches are very good. Like you said, the mindset has shifted. It's not all about the most weight you can lift, the Navy SEAL mentality.
Mhm.
It really is just they'll have different levels. They'll have a performance level, a fitness level. Some will have a master's level. Some, they'll split it to men and women. But even with that, it doesn't matter. You just pick something that's going to keep you moving, and that's the key. So we were talking a little bit offline about my philosophy as a doctor and how I value patients or people who I would talk with who would come to see me as their doctor, and I would learn so much from them. And it wasn't just about if they just about me dictating what they should be doing. I learned a lot from my patients about different diets, different fitness. And actually, the person who not only was your friend, but he was a patient who turned me on to CrossFit, told me about it. And what, like, how do you, like, look, we're in our 60s. Hopefully, we don't have to cross the medical profession too much. I know my colleagues very myopic in their thinking, sometimes a little bit egotistical, sometimes, if might I say, dare I say. Um, how do you navigate your your fitness, your health, general health, and just general medical issues or non-issues?
Yeah, so I get my physical every year, and over the years, I've sort of learned what to ignore and what to pay attention to.
Hmm.
So yeah, there was some shakeup, so I go to this practice now, and basically there's two physician's assistants who do the kind of physicals, and they trade off. And I go in and I have my physical with one of them, and we go through everything. And then the other PA who didn't meet me or see me writes up the report. And in the report, he said, I forget the term, but I'm suffering from the term of a the condition of a low heart rate.
Oh God,
I might want to have a
bradycardia was,
yeah,
yeah,
I
it's
might want to
awful.
have a doctor check that
Oh
out because my
no.
resting heart rate was 49 when I was in
Yeah.
the office. And then this physician's assistant told me that my BMI was too high, my body mass index was too high, and I might want to look at starting an exercise program and eating more fruits and vegetables.
Right. Oh God. Yeah.
And I was like, "Oh, thank you. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank
Not
you. Yeah,
not
exactly. That's
not too worried about
hysterical.
that."
Yeah. I
Yeah.
love that
So,
because, yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
no, that's, I can't
Yeah.
imagine the last 60 plus year old they had that, had any of those types of or any of this type of conditioning.
Right, exactly. And yeah, it's funny because the resting heart rate, my resting heart rate, I was never fast, but it was always in maybe the high 50s. Since I've been doing CrossFit, it's consistently in the low 50s and usually
Hmm.
and sometimes the high 40s. And that's that's the training. When I went to go for my hip replacement, I'd already been doing CrossFit for about a year, and I was, I think, 58, and the anesthesiologist, who was a similar age, but clearly not fit. Clearly, I won't go
Hmm.
into it, but clearly not fit. And my EKG, I always knew that my EKG has a little bit of an abnormality that's normal for me. But
Hmm.
when the computer readout reads it, because the computer, when you have an EKG in a doctor's office, they always have a computer. The computer reads it out. The doctor will oversee it to make sure it's okay. But it would always, and think about this, because no doctor wants to get sued. The algorithm has a very high positive rate. I mean, it's gonna
Sure.
error on the positive side, right? So mine said, cannot rule out previous MI, heart attack, whatever, whatever. So here I am, everything's fine, I'm looking great, and the guy he goes, "Hey, people our age, we really should be really careful, and you probably should have a stress test before you have the surgery." I'm thinking stress test. I have a stress test 3 or 4 days a week, right? And so I don't think that's. And anyway, the internist who examined me pre-op said, "Nah, don't worry about it. It's fine." Yeah, I knew it was fine anyway. But that's right. People don't know how to react, don't because it's so good for you. What you're doing is so good for you, and doctors can't understand that. And many doctors who don't know about CrossFit will warn you. If you just went to a doctor, not telling them what you do, say, doc, I've been thinking about this thing called CrossFit. They go, oh no, no, my God, don't do that. You're gonna hurt yourself, whatever. And yeah, so yeah, it's interesting how, and that's why again, I encourage people, get your information. Sometimes, look, it's great if you have a doctor who can guide you, coach you, but you're gonna have to do a lot of your own homework. and learn about this stuff on your own and get good coaching and good sources. But Eric, you've
Yeah, I mean,
taken,
let
yeah,
me
go
just
ahead.
add
Yeah,
some.
yeah.
My nephew just graduated from a top medical school, I don't know, a year or two ago, and we were talking about it, and he said they did not have any discussion or exploration of fitness in any way. He said they had like one session on nutrition, but they didn't talk about fitness or physical activity or anything in his entire 4 years of med school.
Amazing. Okay, so this is 2020, whatever, 4, 23, whenever you graduate. I graduated in 1985. Okay, the same exact thing. Okay, an afternoon in during biochemistry, we had an afternoon dedicated to nutrition. That's it.
Hmm.
Nothing about exercise, nothing about fitness, tons about pharmaceutical. Pharmacology was like a
Right.
year course, okay? Tons of that. I mean, it's important to know the dynamic of how medications work and stuff, but because you need the human body, you can understand it better. But I mean, come on. Nutrition is the best medicine. Fitness is the best medicine.
Hmm.
Sleep hygiene, the best medicine, exposure to sunshine, best medicine. I mean, there's so many natural ways to get healthy and to stay healthy besides relying on, these sorts of things. And it's very disappointing to hear that even in the modern now medical education, it's still lagging behind. I know that because I get the journals and I see what they're writing
Sure.
about in the journals. So yeah, it's disappointing, but it is what it is. You can just That's why I encourage people who are listening. Look, I'm not. My colleagues have. Well, for the longest time, I was outside the box anyway. I had a very specialized practice, and even though I was, top doctor or whatever, by some peers who would vote for me, there were many who didn't respect what I did, and because it was very threatening. So I had, I would encourage and I'd get patients from other doctors, and I would say, look, if you ever think you have to take care of my feelings, you're in the wrong place. Okay, this is about you. You tell me what's bugging you,
Right.
what you found on the internet, what you want to talk about, or and we'll do that. But if you have to think about how I'm going to react to it or how I'm going to feel about it, I'm not the right doctor for you because
Sure.
it's not about that. So, um, but Eric, so you've really taken CrossFit to the next level, and for those who are interested in doing that, I'd like to talk a little bit about that. How you started ramping it up to start competing in the CrossFit Games, and going from the Open to the quarters, the semis to the Games, and what does that look like, and how did you get started wanting to do that?
Yeah. So I told you how I found CrossFit and I was playing pickup basketball. And what I was really doing a lot of in that point in my life as a hobby was mountaineering, was very rock climbing, ice climbing, climbing big peaks. And I would do CrossFit and various sort of extensions of that to stay in shape. And I'd plan out a trip for the summer going to South America, and I knew I had to get in shape, and that would drive me through. And somewhere after, I don't know, 8, 10 years or so, I sort of switched and just really fell in love with the actual performance of CrossFit and started to get into competing. And right about that time, there were some of the coaches who started putting out their specialized online program. Ben Bergeron up in CrossFit New England started Comp Train, and I started not going to class, but going with 3 or 4 guys to open gym and doing this more competitive programming and working my way up in the open. And when I was 50, 54 bracket, I was like 220th, 250th, and that's when you had to make 200th to get to the next level. And I really wanted to qualify, really wanted to qualify. And the year I turned 55, I was like, oh, I'm going to make the top 200, and uh, I actually ended up being 23rd in the qualifier. So I made the
Well,
top 200, and then was 23rd back when they were accepting 20 people. So I just missed going to the
oh
CrossFit
no.
Games that year, and then was a few spots behind the following year, and then 2021, right after COVID. I had a really good training year. I had my own personal gym. Everybody was in lockdown or coming out of lockdown. And they took 20 masters in each age group to the games again. And I finished the qualifying round in 21st.
Wow. Oh
And
God.
but there's a but.
Yeah.
One of the competitors was from Australia and one was from Chile, and neither one could make it. So I emailed CrossFit HQ more than just a couple times, and they were able to backfill me, and I got to go to the games that year, and had a great experience. I was 16th. A couple of years in our age group. Once you're over 50, 55, that difference between being the youngest in the age group and even 2, 3 years in is pretty significant.
Yes. Yeah.
Um, but I got there, and then I set my sights on 2023 when I would turn 60. And I was getting ready to go for that. And then in August of 22, I had pretty significant shoulder surgery.
Mm.
My rotator cuff was torn, labrum was torn, bicep was torn. My surgeon said it's going to be a 2-hour surgery, and 3.5 hours later, he fixed everything up. But this was my year. So I was training with my arm in the sling. I was doing the assault bike, the air bike with one arm. I was throwing sandbags over my good shoulder and just walking.
Wow.
And I was pretty well back in shape 6 months later by the CrossFit Open and through the qualifying and got back qualified for the games. I think I qualified in fifth place out of 10. And 3 days before we were supposed to go to Madison, Wisconsin, maybe 2 days, I was doing some moderate snatches and felt a crunch in my shoulder
Oof.
and tore the long head of my biceps.
Oh God.
And I literally, my wife, like later that day, is like, "How are you doing, honey?" And literally burst into tears.
Oh wow.
But I got into my orthopedist. My surgeon was out for his summer vacation and met with his physician's assistant, Jackie, who was just delightful and super helpful. And I go in and meet with her and I explain what happened. And I said, "Can I go?" She's like, "Oh, sure." And I'm like, "Jackie, I'm going to be like climbing ropes and throwing weight over my head." And I said, really, will I be okay? She's like, "Yeah, that arm's going to be a little weaker, but not much, maybe 5, 10%." She said, "You
Wow.
do everything." So I did, and I got there and was like, okay, I just want to make it through the first exercise, through the first workout. And I got through the first workout and it was a little sore, but I did okay. And then I was like, all right, I'd like to keep going. I want to be in the mix. I want to be, top half at least or competing. And I go through the weekend and I took third place and got to stand on
Wow.
the podium at the CrossFit Games. So that was super
That's
fun.
amazing. That's amazing. And what's amazing about that, and what I want my audience to recognize, that sho the shoulder is the most underestimated joint for
Mm.
disability as we get older. When your shoulder goes, it's terrible. You don't realize how bad. And most people who go through shoulder surgery don't ever recover. I mean, they're almost disabled, and they can only do, and they always have that excuse. They always favor it. The doctors all the time will give you cortisone injections and do band-aids. But this is a testimony to the type of musculature that you built around the shoulder to allow it to you to recover like that. And I know that a few years ago, I ended up with a tennis elbow, a lateral epicondylitis, they call it. And that was because I didn't have the strength back here. I was relying too much on my forearms. And I remember when I would do strict pull-ups, I'd get burning in my
Mm.
forearm. And that's because I wasn't using my posterior muscles and around the shoulder. And that's one thing that CrossFit really focuses on is strength around the rhomboids, the lats, the interscapular muscles, the muscles that are in the back that support the shoulder. And that's amazing, Eric. Honestly, it's like really that's fantastic. And
Yeah.
when you say like, oh, I was 23rd and they take 20, people will say, oh, he didn't make it. Well, you see, it's like you're comparing yourself to the top like 0.0001% of the population. It's like a woman in my class, actually, when we were doing the 12 Days of Christmas workout this year, she was new to CrossFit, new to our class, and she finished last. And we were cheering her on to finish, and she was kind of like, "Oh wow," kind of. And after she got over, I said, "You realize who you're comparing yourself to?" Okay.
Mhm.
I mean, walk out into the general population, and what you're doing for yourself in your 50s is amazing, and so yeah, that's if you really want to get fit, right? Do start getting fit, start doing it because it's all downhill. I mean, it does suck to get old if you let it suck to get old. I mean,
Yep.
it can suck, right? I mean, I'm sure you have plenty of friends and family members and people who you just see in the general population who are really struggling, who are younger than us.
Yeah. And the point that I like to bring up in all the research, and even back 10, 20, 30 years ago, especially, the messaging was, in order to be healthy, you have to increase your cardio, you have to increase your VO2 max, you have to run, you have to go to spin classes. And people have been doing that for decades. And now they find these people who are in their 70s, 80s, even 60s, and they're not that healthy. It's not help
Yeah.
their health span. And all the current research and thinking and evidence is what you need is strength. You need muscle mass. You need to fight that natural, the term sarcopenia, loss of muscle mass as
Hmm.
we get older. And muscle is armor. And going to the gym and lifting little 5 pound weights. I was talking to someone locally, and pretty much everybody in my town or people that I know, even tangentially, know my story and my journey with CrossFit. And this woman was telling me, she goes to the gym, but she only lifts 5 pound weights. She won't lift anything more than that. I said to her, I said, "Do you go to the grocery store?" She said, "Of course." I
Yeah.
said, "Do you carry your grocery bags in the house?" She said, "Yep." I said, "How much do they weigh?"
Yeah.
15 pounds. And I said, "Do you travel?" And I know she travels. And she said, "Yeah." I said, "Do you put your luggage in the overhead bin?" She says, "Uh-huh." And I said, "How much does that weigh?" She's like, 25 pounds.
Yeah.
So you're doing these little 5 pound weights. You're not helping yourself. Like,
Yeah.
go pick heavy things up and put heavy things down. And for most people, get coaching. If you don't know how to do this, get a good coach who will not just put you through a workout, but teach you and coach you. So if you want to, you can do it on your own.
Yeah, the body mechanics are the main thing. I often when I'm on an airplane and I see people lifting things up, that is a recipe for disaster. I mean, they're they're stretching in different ways. They're not engaging their lats. They're not. it's terrible. They're going to rip their shoulder. I mean, I know it. I know it because I've seen it happen with people. Uh,
And
th-
here's a cautionary tale. I was on a plane, of course, flying to Florida not too long ago, and the woman across the aisle who was old-ish, she had maybe 5, 10 years on us. She literally reached across the aisle and tapped me on the shoulder and asked me if I could open her bag of potato chips
oh
because
God.
she did not have the strength
Oh
to
my
open a
good.
bag of potato
Oh
chips.
my goodness. Wow.
So
Wow.
cautionary tale there.
Yes, yeah. So Eric, to get into the, prime, and this is not only for competition, but do you take any supplements? Do you like any? Have you noticed any that have worked better than others if you've used some?
Yeah, absolutely. The I take some extra protein because we all need more protein than we're getting.
Yep.
So I'll eat generally 3 good meals a day, but I'll also do a whey protein shake. And so supplementing with protein is, I think, pretty important. If you're able to get the zero point 0.8 to 1 grams of protein per ideal body weight a day, good on you without it. But if not, take the shake. Number two is creatine. Creatine is one of the, if not the most widely researched, generally accepted as safe supplements. I think the only caveat near the doctor is if you have some pre-existing kidney issues, check with your doctor. But if you don't, this is safe. There's no preloading, loading like people used to do. 5 grams a day for the average person. If you're a bigger dude, maybe 6 or 7. If you're a smaller person, maybe 3 or 4. Take it every day, and it helps you build muscle mass. I won't go into the mechanisms,
Yeah.
but it also, recent research, and you've probably seen this, has shown that it's really good for brain and cognitive function.
Hmm.
So that's essential. I also take beta alanine, which is a little aerobic boost. There's some research on this. It might be placebo for me, uh, but that's more if you're competing and want that little bit of extra. Maybe if you're into running, even you can look into that. And then I'll take vitamin D and fish oil just to
Hmm.
round things out.
Yeah. Yeah, so those are, I take a boatload of stuff, which includes some of that stuff as well. And um, what's interesting, and again, when you ask the doctor for advice, if you asked me 15 years ago about creatine, I would have said, no, it's probably not good for you. You don't
Mm,
need it, whatever. And now I take it every day. I mean, and it's as you said, it's researched, it's safe. I recommend it to my 93-year-old father who takes it
mhm.
before he goes to silver sneakers class.
Nice.
I got him into that, and he really notices the difference. In fact, our dog, our 16-year-old golden doodle, who's so energetic for 16, all of a sudden, she had a massive drop off over the last probably 2 months ago, where she wasn't able to jump as well. Her leg was giving out on her rear legs. So I started her on creatine and also this other product which I'm self-experimenting on, which is called Myos. It's supposed to build muscle mass or prevent sarcopenia, and I started giving her that also, but the creatine first, and noticeable difference. I mean, it's
Really?
incredible. Yeah, noticeable difference. I mean, she's leaping back up on the couch again, the bed, going for the long walks again, without tiring. And I could barely keep up with her when she's walking. I mean, that's how fast she's walking. So, yeah, it's,
I'm going to interrupt. I have a almost 14-year-old Labradoodle who's starting to slow down a little bit, very energetic, and I'm going to see about getting him on a little creatine
yeah.
because my
So what
wife
I,
takes it.
yeah,
We all take it. So,
yeah, I got a scale because she's tiny. She's like 18 pounds, right? So she's a
Mhm.
mini golden doodle. So I got the scale. I got some mini spoons, and I measure it out. So she takes like, uh, 300 milligrams, like 0.3 grams a day.
Hmm.
And yeah, it's good. And this other thing you might want to look into for the dog is, I mean, I'm taking it also, but they have it for canines, Myos, MYOS.
Okay.
Yeah, and yeah, so. Yeah, I think it's important. The nutrition, you talk about the protein, um, branched chain amino acids, the leucine, the isoleucine, and the valine are three that we don't get enough of, which are really important for skeletal muscle. Because muscle moves our skeleton. Like you said, it's our armor. And as we get older, it starts breaking down. So, yeah, Eric, thank you so much for sharing your journey and your experience with CrossFit. I think this Master 60 Plus series is great. I'm glad I decided to do it because I'm learning a lot and I'm getting inspired. And I really appreciate you coming on today.
Yeah, it's been my pleasure. And this has been such a great journey for me. And I know at 61, I'm doing things that my grandparents couldn't have imagined. So if other people can learn from this and get the courage up to step in their local CrossFit box, they're going to be amazed. And I just love helping people, whether in my own coaching or anywhere through this
Yeah.
through
No,
this
I
process.
appreciate you sharing that because I agree. I feel so much alive, at my tender age. So yeah, thanks so much. And until next time, I'm Dr. Charles, aka Coach MD, urging you to stay strong in mind, in body, and right here in soul. Bye for now.